Hello out there, all you young keen geographers, and welcome to your second lesson of the Public Health and Disease tab of the Industrial Revolution Teaching and Learning website resource. Today we are doing a lesson on King Cholera. Last lesson we learnt a bit about the diseases that affected industrial Britain during the Industrial Revolution, but today we are doing King Cholera. So your learning intention and success criteria. So by the end of the lesson you need to know cholera outbreaks in London during the Industrial Revolution, and you need to be able to analyse sources to gain an understanding of what life was like for people during the Industrial Revolution. So your first job here is going to be to watch this little video here on a man named Jon Snow, not the Game of Thrones Jon Snow, but the man who discovered that cholera was connected to drinking water. And he made that discovery in 1854, and that really led to the end of cholera, or the start of the end of cholera during the Industrial Revolution. So watching that video about John, writing down 6 facts from that video. Quick overview of King Cholera. So King Cholera was the name given to cholera during the outbreak in London in 1832. The nickname King Cholera gives us an insight into the lives of people during the time. The term King Cholera suggests that the disease ruled their lives more so than the actual monarchy. So it's a pretty interesting little fact, I guess, behind the reason why they call it King Cholera. Instead of just calling it cholera. So the word king gives us insight into how much this dominated and ruled their lives as well. So guys, your main task for this lesson are sources. So we're going to go through the answers for these sources and analyse them now. So source 1, we have a cartoon that's called A Court for King Cholera, and it's made by an artist named John Leach, and it was sketched in 1852. So let's have a quick little look at it. I'll just zoom in. So you can see here in London, we've got just kind of a common area in the busy city. We've got people in their little apartments in the windows, and then we've got people hustling and bustling about in the filth and their poor, sort of dirty clothing in the middle of London. So let's answer these questions together now. So number 1, is it a primary or secondary source? Why? Well, if you click on the link here, it'll tell you a bit about John Leach and show you the source as well, but it's a primary source. John Leach lived during London during 1852. And he would have seen many cholera outbreaks in his lifetime. So it is a primary source. Who created the source? John Leach. When was the source created? 1852. So they're some pretty basic, easy questions. Now, number 4, why did the artist use the word court in the title of this cartoon? So we know that they call them King Cholera, and a court is a place where you go and meet the king or queen. So the artist is saying this is the place where you'll find your king or where you'll find cholera. Number 5, how can you tell the people in this cartoon belong to the working class? Well, if you look at their extremely poor clothing and dirty clothing, you can see that they belong to the working class. Number 6, what are the children doing on the left of the cartoon? Well, these children are playing about in the filth, this pile of filth and pile of rubbish here. God knows what's in it. Quite likely some human waste. Number 7, what is the woman doing on the left of the cartoon? Well, if you zoom in on this woman here, she's looking through this pile of rubbish and filth to find, hopefully not food, but I'd say to find items of value in the rubbish. What is the woman with the baby doing in the window? If you want the actual answer for this, if you want to see it for yourself, just click on this link here. But this woman here is throwing a bowl of urine out the window. So that is contributing to the spread of cholera as well, as we know. And then number 9, why did the artist create the cartoon? So pretty much the artist, John Leach, is saying that, cholera spreads in these really dirty places, and so this is the type of places where cholera spreads. So he's commenting on the spread of cholera due to the filth of industrial London. Source number 2, we've got a graph showing cholera deaths in Great Britain between 1832 and 2016, and this was created by the Office for National Statistics, and you can find it on Our World in Data as well. So is this a primary or secondary source? Why? It is a secondary source because it is a graph. It is made long after, it was made in 2016, so it's made long after the Industrial Revolution ended, and they obviously have collected data over time, so it is a secondary source. Who created the source is the Office for National Statistics, and it was made in 2015. When was the source created? We've done that. How many people died of cholera in Great Britain in 1849? I know this because it's this big one up here. So the answer is 62,000 people, which is quite a lot for a year. And number 5, what happened between 1861 and 1892? So you can see 1866 here, 14,000 people died, and then 1892, only 135 people died. Now, there are 2 reasons for this. One of them is because John Snow here discovered that cholera was caused by contaminated drinking water, and also vaccines were made to prevent the spread of cholera as well between these years. So there's 2 answers for that one. And so pretty much what happened, the cases fell as well. Number 6, using the graph as evidence, explain when deaths due to cholera were high in Britain. So they were high in Britain, especially during, so we'll go to the years of 1845 to 1866. This is when they were at their highest, because these are the years that outbreaks occurred. It was also when people believed in things like miasmas and didn't know that cholera was spread by drinking contaminated drinking water that had people's poo and pee in it, and mainly because as well as the overcrowding of industrial cities. So people lived in really poor housing with no running water, so no kind of sanitation to help them get rid of their waste. So it was in the streets and it was in the rivers. Number 7, why are there more data points in the last century compared to the 1800s? This is a useful question for a historian. So there are more data points because after the year 1911, they started collecting data every year. And it's very easy to collect data when you can see that 0 people are dying from the disease. So it's very easy to say that no one died from it. So they started collecting data more often. Source number 3, we've got The Silent Highwayman. Now this was created by an unknown artist, but it was published in Punch magazine in 1858. So, is this a primary or secondary source? Why? It's a primary source because it was made during all these cholera outbreaks, this time of filth, industrial Britain, so it is a primary source. Who created the source? Well, it is an unknown artist, but it's published in Punch magazine, so you can say Punch magazine. When was the source created is 1858. Number 4, the highwayman is on a boat on the River Thames, the main river in London. Describe the appearance of the water. So just zooming on the source, you can see the water looks like very deadly and very yucky. It looks really dirty, it's got like dead animals and rubbish floating around in it, and it looks absolutely filthy and sickening. Number 5, why does this cartoon depict death floating on the River Thames? So let's answer that question first. So remember, this is the year 1858. Now if we scroll back up to John, he discovered that it was cholera was spread by contaminated drinking water in 1854. So this is 4 years after John made that discovery. So this cartoon is saying that death is associated with contaminated drinking water. What does this say about people's perception of cholera during the Industrial Revolution? Well, it says by 1858 that people had recognised that filthy, contaminated water spread diseases that killed people. So we've got source number 4. We've got the cartoon Faraday giving his card to Father Thames, created by John Leach in 1885. The cartoon was published in Punch magazine in July of the same year. So we've got another political cartoon here. Pay attention again to the year that this was made. So this is a primary or secondary source. Why? It is a primary source created by someone who was there during the time to see London in its filth. So it is a primary source. Who created the source is John Leach for number 2. Number 3, when was the source created, is 1885. Which person in the cartoon is Professor Faraday? He's this man with the top hat on the right here. Father Thames is not a real person. What is he a representation of? He is a representation of the River Thames. So they're personifying the river. What does it mean when a business person gives you their card? It means they want you to take up their services. They're offering you a service. So Faraday is offering Thames the chance to be cleaned. Number 7, under the title of the cartoon, it says, and we hope the dirty fellow will consult the learned professor. It says it here. We hope the dirty fellow will consult the learned professor. What does this mean, and what is Faraday wanting to do? So it means that the people in Punch magazine who are spreading this message want the river to be clean, and then Faraday wants to clean the river. So that's the answer for that question, because he's giving the river his card to take up his service to be cleaned. Number 8, what is John Leach's purpose for putting this cartoon in a public magazine? Remember, this is after 1 year after. Sorry, I shouldn't say that. It is after John Snow discovered that cholera was spread by contaminated drinking water. So the artist is saying, and this magazine is saying that, cholera is spread by dirty drinking water. We need to clean it up. So that's the message for the cartoon. He wants the river to be cleaned because he knows that it spreads cholera. Got source number 5 here, a cartoon of the cholera epidemic created by an unknown artist in 1849. So number 1, is this a primary or secondary source? It's a primary source. It was created by someone who lived during one of the worst cholera outbreaks. So that is a primary source. When was it created? 1849. Who had cholera in the cartoon? Well, if you look at the cartoon here, it obviously appears to be this man who's looking quite sickly here. What does the phrase King Cholera is a usurper mean? So a usurper means that you've taken over the throne. So it's saying that King Cholera is a threat to society, a threat to the monarchy, therefore English society. What does the phrase filth is treason mean? So treason means when you disobey or go directly against your authority. So it means that if you're filthy, you're going against society. Number 6, with these two phrases in mind, what is the artist's purpose for creating this cartoon? So 2 purposes is to show the threat that cholera has to their lives, and it says that if you're dirty, you're only helping the threat that is cholera. And why might the artist of this cartoon not have revealed their name? Well, they might have wanted to have stayed anonymous. People had conflicting views about diseases in this time as well, and so they might have wanted to stay anonymous for that reason. Source number 6, the last source. Here we have a map of cholera infections in England during the 1849 cholera outbreak, and this map was created in 1852. So, number 1, this is a bit of a tricky one. Is this a primary or secondary source? When maps are created shortly after the time frames they're about, and the people who made them lived through them and collected data from the time, this is a primary source. This map is a primary source. Mainly because it was made shortly after the time. Number 2, observe the source. In what type of place are cholera outbreaks occurring? So I'm going to open up the source by clicking on the link here. And then when it loads, I'm just going to zoom in. So I'm looking for observe the source. What type of place are cholera outbreaks occurring? So I'm going to zoom in. I can see here. So I've got London here. We've got some other sort of towns and cities over here. Southampton. If we scroll up here, we've got Wolverhampton. So these are essentially cities. They're occurring in cities. So that's your answer for number 2. What natural feature is near all these places? So look, we've got a river going in here from the ocean. We've got another river going up here, which has infected all these cities here. So your answer for number 3 will be rivers. And then lastly, source number 4, using the source link to find 3 places that suffered a lot of deaths. So we're looking for these really shaded areas. So we'll go London, Southampton, and if I just zoom in there, we've got Salisbury in there. So I'll go to those 3 places. Of course, you can do any one of these places here, like West Bromwich. You can do Coventry, Newcastle. You can even, that's actually quite low for Manchester, surprisingly. Liverpool quite high, so you can do any of those places there. Guys, you got a 3rd task here. You need to create a character profile on Jon Snow, so hopefully you were paying attention in that video. If you open up the character profile, if you're learning at home, you can print it by clicking on that button there. So you need to have his name, you need to have a picture of him, when he was born, when he died, what he was best known for, discovering the cure, or the cause of cholera really, which led to the cure, and the vaccines of cholera. Lived during the Industrial Revolution. Then you need 3 sentences, what makes him a significant person in world history. And then this last question here, how did Jon Snow benefit the health of people during the Industrial Revolution? That needs to be at least 2 sentences long. And then when you've finished all that, guys, there is a coup on the life of Jon Snow. So thanks for watching, guys. Please make sure you go ahead and subscribe if you want to stay up to date to any new lessons that are made in existing websites, or want to stay up to date to any new websites that I make as well. Thank you.